where they can get copies of Sue Ellen's wonderful book. It's called Subverted. The title is Subverted, and it's for sale out here in the Conference and Expo booth at Sue Ellen's booth out there. So please feel free to go and get a copy after this next session, which you won't want to miss because it's really incredible. So now we're going to have our panelists speak to the theme, and this will be moderated by a name that I'm sure is familiar to all of you here, Kathryn Jean Lopez. Kathryn Jean is a senior fellow at the National Review Institute, editor-at-large of the National Review Online, and a nationally syndicated columnist who's been published by a wide variety of publications, including the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Star and Stripes, Our Sunday Visitor, the National Catholic Register, and she's the founding director of Catholic Voices USA and speaks frequently on faith and public life on college campuses, on radio and TV. A product of New York City Catholic education, she serves on a number of Catholic boards and is a member of Cardinal Timothy Dolan's Pro-Life Commission. At the opening Mass of the Year of Faith in Rome in October 2012, Pope Benedict XVI presented her with a message to women throughout the world. Here she is, Kathryn Jean Lopez.
Sue Ellen just said, wow, when she heard about the message from Pope Benedict. Actually, it's a cause of derision among friends of mine who now make fun of me for the fact that I received a message for every woman in the world, which I haven't successfully delivered to every woman in the world yet. So apparently I'm going to live long because I have far to travel. Thank you for being here. I know it's cold and it's hard to get here, or it'll be hard to leave. But this is important, and that's why you're here. I'm delighted to be with this panel, and I'm not going to go on too long with intros because the bios are in the program, so you can read up on our panelists, some of whom I'm sure you know well already. The theme of this march, of course, is pro-life, pro-women. I've been watching on Twitter, actually. They took the Twitter board down, in part because it's being sabotaged by the left. How could you claim that forcing a woman to go through with a pregnancy is pro-women is sort of the pushback that we're getting. So I hope we can illuminate that topic a little bit more this morning. And so I'm going to start with Mollie Hemingway, who is a journalist with The Federalist, a young mom and a great friend of mine. She is tenacious, and one of my favorite things that she's done in recent years, but it's hard to say one of my favorite things that Mollie's done, but really calling out journalists on their coverage of abortion, and in particular, she really stood out when the Kermit Gosnell trial was going on in Philadelphia, and no one was covering it. And believe it or not, I mean, after you harassed reporters on Twitter, all of a sudden I'm sitting in a hotel traveling and look up and there's Anderson Cooper finally covering the Gosnell trial because Mollie had been harassing him, among others. So Mollie, would you begin by giving some reflections on what this theme means and how maybe we can use it to reframe the debate a little bit better?
Sure, thank you very much. It's interesting, every year around this time I reflect on my own introduction to the pro-life movement, which for me happened very early. I remember asking my parents, I'd heard about abortion, I didn't know what it was, I was 9, and they told me. I remember just not believing it possible that what they were saying was true, and from that moment forward, it affected so many things about my life and my activism and my involvement. When I was 9, I instinctively understood the injustice of what was being done to the child. That was easy enough for a child to understand. And as I have grown, and as I have become a mother myself, and just aged as a woman, I've come to realize just how much more of an injustice abortion is, not just for the child, but for women, and in fact for the entire world, which is why I loved the preceding remarks from Sue Ellen. It's really interesting that the pro-choice movement has been so effective at convincing the media that they are on the women's side of this issue, given how powerful women are in the pro-life movement, how utterly divided women are on this topic, and how there's just no journalistic justification for treating this as if we don't exist, as if we women who are caring so much about this issue don't exist. Also, just the ignorance of the larger issues at play. One of the things that I thought was really interesting a couple years ago was a study that came out, I think the paper was called The Paradox of Declining Female Happiness by Justin Wolfers and Betsy Stevenson. So they were looking at how over the last 40 years, things have gone so well for women. They say, you have all these educational opportunities, you have rising income, you have greater freedom, including control over your body. So why is it that women's happiness has plummeted during that time, even as male happiness has increased? You look at other studies of this similar nature showing that women get more value out of spending time with their families than men do, even though men also enjoy greater time spent with their families. You learn that men enjoy their forays into domestic care far more than women have enjoyed commensurate forays into professional life. And you look at all these things together and sort of realize that people aren't thinking through holistically about the entire argument and how important it is that we value women as women, not despite them being women, despite us being women. And this lie that in order for us to be valued members of society, we have to be not pregnant as men are not pregnant. It's scandal and it's ridiculous, and that we continue to have this lie perpetuated in the media is of great frustration to me. So I love this theme this year, and I think it's wonderful. Anyone who's of course been involved in the pro-life movement knows that it's led by many women, that if you go to the March for Life, you see tons of women, of course. But because of bad media coverage, that's something that's not shared with a broader audience. I think also just really quickly about the scandal of the war on women is the messaging that certain partisans have used to describe support for abortion on demand. That was going very well for people who used that rhetoric up until the last election cycle, when you saw that that is not working so well with people anymore. Whether it's Wendy Davis, who filibustered a bill protecting unborn children after 20 weeks of pregnancy, I think it was, in Texas. She didn't just lose, I mean, she was humiliated in utter defeat. I don't think people realized what the floor was for pro-choice support in Texas until she ran. She convinced no one of her cause. Look at, Sandra Fluck ran this expensive campaign in California, humiliated in defeat. You saw major wins for pro-life women, from Elise Stefanik, the youngest pro-life, the youngest female member of Congress. And you also saw just Mark Udall, who was the senator from Colorado, where I am from, who was so committed to his war on women messaging that he was renamed not Mark Udall, but Mark Uterus by the media. That's how bad he was, and how kind of sick and fed up people were of this messaging. So I think that this is a great moment, because we're making ourselves known, and it's less effective, and it's just great to be part of such a powerful movement at this time.
Even frankly, the fact that people would bother on Twitter at 9 o'clock in the morning pushing back on this theme, I think is a sign of success and encouragement.
I just want to say one thing about that too, because it'll also happen, for the next few days. Because I am out there on social media, sometimes people share their opinions in response to me. And a wise woman told me.
Always civil.
Yeah, always, but a wise woman, Elizabeth Scalia, who's known as the Anchoress, told me that just to pray for people who do this. So even if tomorrow you encounter people who are hostile, to just pray for these people. They're frequently people who are in a very bad situation, or they're feeling a tremendous amount of guilt, or any number of things. Don't get angry, just pray. They're being put in your pathway to give you an opportunity to pray for them.
Yeah. Grazie Christie is a doctor from Miami. She writes and speaks frequently as a senior fellow with the Catholic Association. Gracie, will you share your thoughts?
I'm really happy to be here at the march, and it's the kind of thing that I have to come to the march every year because like a lot of women here, I think all the women here, I'm sure, I do lots of different things, too many things, my husband says. And one of the things that I do is I teach sex education. And I'm in great demand because I'm a woman and I'm a doctor and because nobody else will do it. So I teach pretty much every 8th grader in the Archdiocese of Miami. And I do all sorts of ages. So I have presentations for every age and every gender and everything. But anyway, so the problem for me is that I come home really depressed after I teach the 8th grade girls because I've discovered that a terrible thing happens to girls in middle school. They stop believing that they have any choice when it comes to sex and dating. And this is how it goes. The conversation goes like this all the time. So I'll say something like, girls, now that I've explained how pretty much it's impossible to avoid sexually transmitted diseases and pregnancy, you can see that the only real safety lies in waiting for marriage to become sexually active. The girls look at each other like I'm from Mars. And this is really shocking, but usually one girl will raise her hand and she'll say, Dr. Christie, I don't know how it was before you were married, but nowadays no boy will date a girl more than a couple times if she doesn't sleep with him. So if we want to date, we have no choice. These are the words that send me home, just totally depressed. As a woman and the mother of girls, I would like to see every young woman strong, honorable, independent, and making these crucial decisions based on her informed conscience and her noble heart. The feminists who worked so hard for equality for all of us, succeeded in many ways. I myself am a product of their success. But even though the barriers to education and profession have melted, and women have real opportunities in the workforce, and all the talk of choice, young women today seem to have less power over their bodies and sexuality than our own grandmothers did. Not all the girls feel powerless, thankfully. The young women and the girls who are going to march tomorrow, they don't feel powerless. They are refusing the false banner of choice that the culture waves at them, and they are opting for real freedom. The freedom to wait for love and the emotional and physical safety of a true and lasting commitment, or marriage, as we call it. What these young women know is that to be pro-life is to be pro-woman, that these two things go hand in hand. And they're the new feminists, as we were told, and she's perfectly right. And they are rebuffing the lies and the soul-crushing conformity of modern culture that tells us that extramarital sex is nothing but a pleasurable pastime with no physical, emotional, or spiritual downsides. The women at the demonstration, all of us here, we know that this is wrong. We've seen the downsides, or we've experienced them ourselves. The sexually transmitted disease rate for diseases like gonorrhea and chlamydia continue to rise, with over 10 million young people infected each year. And women bear the burdens of infertility and ectopic pregnancy and pelvic inflammatory disease that come with these diseases. About 40% of all young women now are infected with HPV, the genital wart virus that causes cervical cancer. And even now, more than 10,000 people, young people, every year are infected with HIV. And that number, the transmission rate, is actually rising, not going down. It's no mystery to all of us that sex as a pastime is bad for your health. And this is so even with condoms available freely at every clinic and school nurse office. So policies advertised as advancing women's freedom, like universal contraception and abortions, have not reduced unintended pregnancy, which is steady at 7% per year for girls under 24. And the truth is that young people are feeling safer, and they're feeling falsely safer, and they're engaging in more premarital sex, and they're experiencing the usual bad outcomes. So all of these things lead me to the fact that the march is extremely important, because we need to go back to an idea of femininity that embraces maternity and I know all the women who are mothers in this room know that there is no greater joy. And women are safest in the bosom of a loving family, with a man that will love those children that come naturally to them, and they can raise them together.
Alison Howard from Alliance Defending Freedom, will you share some of your thoughts on this year's theme?
Thank you. Well, thank you guys for being here this morning. It's just so fun for me to think about thousands of us getting together, flying in and training in, and probably walking in now at this point that all transportation may be down, to unify around a cause that really matters. I'm 27 years old. I'm Director of Alliance Relations at Alliance Defending Freedom, which, if you're not aware of, is the coolest mission statement I've ever seen. We are a legal nonprofit that works to keep the door open for the spread of the gospel. It's that easy. And so we've got amazing lawyers doing some amazing work, especially on the life issue. And as a millennial, I think I'm really encouraged to see all the young people here. And you'll see that tomorrow. That's what you're going to see, is a diverse group of backgrounds, ages, because there's something about this that registers for a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons. You know, I always kind of laugh when, as Mollie pointed out, the media fails to represent the true diversity of our side of the debate, because you'll go and you'll see people with kids, you'll see older people with their grandkids, you'll see Quakers for life, atheists for life, LGBT for life, feminists for life. And if that doesn't say that there are so many reasons to truly think about this, religious, scientific, just simply moral convictions, I kind of love that about us. So it's a really, kind of putting the fun and dysfunctional in a way, in the amount of groups that support this cause, but that really says that we are on the right side of this. And that's been a lot of hard work of those in this room, so thank you. I just want to thank you as a young person for the great work you've done. It is only because of the bravery that you showed after a really terrible Supreme Court decision that allows all of us to meet today, that allows my age group to speak freely on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and share our hearts on this. You showed us how to do it, and showed us how to show compassion and redemption. You know, in a room of this size, we know the statistics, and we know that there are going to be a lot of people that we encounter, maybe some up here in the room and in the march tomorrow, that are post-abortive, men and women. And I just want to encourage you to see that for what it is, and know that if there are a lot of great people in this room that you'll encounter this weekend who need to hear a lot of love from you still. Because I get to meet with a lot of them, and I've talked to them, I'm sure you guys have. You're the heroes in your community, looking face to face with the women, deciding what to do. And it is your love that changes their life. So thank you. I was kind of reminded of when Mollie mentioned how she became pro-life, that I found a picture of my dad when I was younger, and it's the only picture I have of my dad when he was a baby. This tiny little, almost like stamp, and it's these two people, black and white, holding a baby. And I found it in my dad's truck because I was probably looking for snacks. Like I was like 8, and I'm like, who is this? And he said, "That's your grandma and grandpa. And that's me." And it didn't make sense because I'd never met them before. And my dad kindly sat me down, and he's always been my best friend. And he explained to me that he was left as a baby in a hotel room. That his dad left his mom, and she was in a bad spot. We don't really know the circumstances surrounding her pregnancy or that moment in her life, but he thanked her for choosing life and leaving him at a place that she knew he would be found. And I was shocked. The thought to leave your child behind, I struggled with for a while when I was younger, but to hear him thank her then and in Mother's Day sermons since, that she chose life. I think pro-life is pro-woman because that woman, who I never got to meet, needed the support of you guys. Needed that support. I don't know who spoke into her life, but she chose life, and that's awesome. So I thank you guys, because someone here may in some far way be connected to my grandma, who I never got to meet. That's why pro-life is pro-woman, because women need to be supported in situations. You know, thankfully, good information is out there. We're one of the most highly connected, highly resourced generations. I mean, we can jump online, you can look at the undercover videos of Planned Parenthood. Thank you, Mollie, for making media pay attention to that. You can find out what's going on inside during pregnancy. You can find statistics. You can read debates on both sides. And that's what my generation is going through right now. They're really kind of toying with the media's and the left side of the argument versus, you know, this compassionate argument that's being made for life. That we now have 4D sonograms. It's amazing. We've got stories. We've got these young women, by the way, that Gracie mentioned. These young women are reaching out to other young women in their time of need. I have 2 younger sisters. I have 2 foster care brothers. And it's often that I'll get a text from them that says, hey, Alison, real quick, my friend said their birth control stopped working. What do I tell them? Or this conversation's happening. What do I say? And I'm like, hold the phone, we stop everything. That's what we deal with. But it's making sure that people have the information they need and that every young person has one person in their life that maybe one time told them, you don't have to do this. Knowing that one person to go to that's not going to judge and condemn, that seems to know a lot, but it's not going to force it on you, but it's going to share it with you, that's life-changing. So for me, I think, as a millennial and young woman, specifically a young woman, we're dealing with it, can I do it all? Right? So Cosmo's been promoting it, I read Glamour just 2 days ago. It's climbing the ladder. And then on the next ad is an ad for Plan B, because when pregnancy doesn't fit into your career. So you kind of have this unique situation where the left is saying, that's a very feminine, general feminist idea. You can have it all, you can do it all. But they're the ones saying you can't. It's pro-lifers like you that encourage me that you can be a mom and an amazing journalist and an amazing lover of the Lord and speak and do and travel. That you can be a doctor and a mom, right? So that motherhood does not end your career. That's the pro-life side. That's us saying that. So please remind your friends and continue to tell the young women in your life, you know, you can do it all in different seasons, of course, but you're strong enough to define your own success. The other side wants us to feel alone. And I think it's because of that. I was looking at some statistics I want to share with you that I think will shock you, and I'll wrap it up. 23% of my age millennials, 23% believe abortion should be illegal in all circumstances. That's larger than any other demographic, including seniors. That blew me away. Illegal in all circumstances. 35% of millennials believe that abortion is morally unacceptable. So either way they hold about whether they're pro-choice or pro-life, that label, which most don't even know what that means, so ask them what they think that means. That 35% believe it's morally unacceptable. That to me says we're doing a good job, guys, of sharing the truth. Another encouraging stat, that more pro-life legislation has been passed in the States in the last 4 years than in the last decade. People are getting it. We can create sound law that protects women and so that's on a local level. We're engaging on a local level, but also nationally. I mean, I think, we know this is the first time Congress has voted to defund Planned Parenthood, which is huge. And everyone uses the word historic all the time, but that really is historic. You also have, because of that, and because of the great work of you guys, forced every presidential candidate to say something about it. So you have Marco Rubio now just announced he has a pro-life advisory board. Novel idea. You have Carly Fiorina speaking with Glamour magazine with S.E. Cupp, another conservative journalist, and S.E. provides a question from a reader about defunding Planned Parenthood, and Carly gives a beautiful answer that that money, $1.2 million a day of taxpayer funds that we give to Planned Parenthood, can be redirected to federally qualified health centers that actually do mammograms, actually help women. I mean, I like to think, how did that information get to Carly? But you never know. So keep communicating, keep investing. It's making a difference on a local level, a national level, and individually in the relationships that you guys have. So ultimately, pro-life is pro-woman, and I'm pro-life because I'm pro-love, and we're doing it really well. So thanks.
this to you this week, have great new polling that commissions from Marist polling that shows that the majority of Americans are for some restrictions on abortion, and it's really encouraging numbers. I'm not doing justice, I just wanted to mention that as well. Sue Ellen.
Well, that was so inspiring. I don't think I have anything else to say, but
I think we need Alison beginning the march tomorrow.
I think so too.
And please get her on camera, talking like that.
I guess the only thing that I want to add, because they wanted me to talk about my personal life, and I had a wonderful marriage with a beautiful man for 40 years, and men and women work together, as we all know, work best when we're a team and when we support each other. And so this whole, we can't do this without the men in our lives. And I could never have done the things in my life that I've done without my beloved husband. He died 8 years ago. But after he died, what was the first? We were writers together, and we were really enough for each other in many ways. We worked at home 24/7. So what did I do after he died? The first year after he died, I got very, very connected with a little church. And I'm actually the church lady. Gone from being a Cosmo girl to the church lady who lives next door to my priest. And I water his orchids when he goes out of town. and he's now using my computer this week because he can't use it very well, but I sent him a little message, may God enrich his computer talents while I'm gone. But it's very important to have that interconnectedness. This book that I wrote would never have been written without all of the support and love of all the people that I'm interconnected with in that church. And we need the men in our lives, we need our children, we need to all work together. But guess what? Love does interconnect us, and we're going to win this.
Jumping off on that point, Sue Ellen, you spoke of the pro-life movement earlier as an army of love. And whoever wants to first talk about this, you look like you do. What do you mean by that? And what are maybe some of the beacons that you see out there that really demonstrate this and manifest this love? Why don't you go ahead? Yeah, no, Sue Ellen. Oh.
Okay, well, as I said, it's obviously an army of love. We're all interconnected. We believe that we're interconnected with everyone and everything. We're connected to God. God is the source of all love. That's what we're fighting. The sexual revolution that gave us abortion and Roe v. Wade and all of this was a very divisive, a violent movement. If you look at it, it says you can't. It was a splitting movement. Remember what I said? It split sex from babies. It split men from women. It split marriages. It was a very divisive movement. Love is a unifying movement, and that's why this is an army of love.
Mollie, what is out there that encourages you, and maybe are the best examples? Although I love your example already of Elizabeth Scalia advising you to pray for people who are yelling at you on Twitter.
I realize that the pro-life movement is much larger than, there are a lot of people who are involved in the pro-life movement because they're religious, but it's much larger than just people who are motivated by religion. Like Alison, I take utter delight in seeing, Harley Davidson riders for life or whatever, as you go through the march route. But it is interesting, but there is a religious concept which I was thinking of recently because a member of the media totally botched her understanding of it. But in Christianity, you talk about the body of Christ and how different people form different functions and how they all work together to show God's love. And there's a lot that you see about that same metaphor in the pro-life movement. So there are people who are working on legislation. There are people who are just praying outside of abortion clinics or counseling outside of abortion clinics. There are medical professionals who are running pro-life clinics. There are communicators who are trying to get the message out. And then most importantly, there are people who just in their day-to-day lives are supportive of the people that they are currently in relationship with, to encourage them to live their lives in such a way, so that they themselves live their lives in such a way, so as to avoid the violence and destruction of abortion. But I do love those sisters who are, forgive me as
The
a
Sisters
woman,
of Life?
Yes, they are.
From
I
New
love
York.
these. I love these ladies. I got to hear them speak a few months ago about their ministry to women who are in crisis pregnancy. And there are, of course, religious groups throughout the world who are doing this kind of work. It is hard to be dispirited when you see these gains that are made. I mean, sometimes you think, wow, we've been working on this for a really long time. Our foremothers and forefathers were working on this for decades, and we're still not realizing our goal. On the other hand, you see just tremendous success, even in terms of when you think about how our society has withstood the pressure from this, elite, these cultural elites who have been shoving this message down everybody's throat that abortion is a good thing, and sometimes they're actually quite overt in their messaging, and people just keep saying that's absolutely not true. And in fact, like Alison was pointing out, younger people are more likely to have just moral problems with abortion than previous generations. This is the most important thing since changing the hearts and minds of people has always been the primary goal of the pro-life movement.
Both Mollie and Sue Ellen mentioned the violence. Archbishop Chikyu in Philadelphia used a phrase a couple of years ago, the most intimate violence, and I thought that was the best description of abortion I had ever heard. And it just compounds itself. And one of the most beautiful things about the Sisters of Life is, while you don't have to be a believer in God, of course, to be pro-life and be in the pro-life movement, there's this powerful layer of prayer and even atonement about their women religious dedicated to this mission of protecting the vulnerable unborn and helping women. They have homes for women, and they also have 10,000 volunteers across the country. So if they get a phone call that there's a woman in California who is has an appointment for an abortion, I've been on these email chains more than once, is scheduled for an abortion on Saturday. She just needs A, B, and C. Well, they make some phone calls, send out some emails, and A, B, and C come together before Saturday morning, and very often she winds up not having that abortion. And because she now has that bond of love and support that she didn't know that was there. Gracie, you do so much work in addition to teaching every 8th grader in the Archdiocese of Miami, helping walk with women and help them see that they're not alone. What do you find most encouraging, and maybe even in some of your conversations with 8th graders when they don't totally depress you?
I like to think of the young people nowadays as the ultrasound generation, because one of the things I do, besides sex ed, is ultrasound, fetal ultrasound, and it is, it used to be that a fetal ultrasound was a hazy gray and black thing that only radiologists could understand. But now it's accessible to everybody, and it's this wonderful window into the miracle that's going on inside every pregnant woman. And what's going on inside is that she's creating a human being, with God's help, of course. And you can't cover truth forever. What's true will eventually out. And so this culture, this pro-abortion culture that we heard the history of this morning, and the way it has taken charge of our whole, the way we look at women and the way we look at children as accessories and commodities, and the way we look at marriage as sort of optional and maybe later. This does not concord with the truth, because the truth is what the ultrasound shows us, that there is this tremendous thing going on. And so young people, I like to think, because I do ultrasounds, that young people are responding beautifully to this truth that's been uncovered. Because now we get to look inside. And this is new. All the things, the world moves along and science moves along. And scientism tells us that as science progresses, we will get more individual and more in control and less devoted to God and less and less understanding of ourselves as connected beings, right? There's this whole thought process like that science has that kind of progress. But the truth is that all science does is illuminate to us the natural world, which is a creation of God. So science will lead us to the truth, and the truth will lead us back to this beautiful, the reality that each one of us is a beloved child of God.
I'd like to add that those networks that you built over the last 45 years were not there when I was a young mother. So the so-called need for abortion that they keep ramming down our throats is no longer necessary. You built over the last 50 years, you built these networks, and it's an entirely different world. It's no wonder that the millennials are saying no to this now, because you've given them other choices, better choices.
And so we go to the millennial. Alison, what are you finding most encouraging? And can I also ask you, when some of us hear war on women and all of these things, we've been hearing it for a very long time. It's every political season. From your fresh perspective, what does it feel like? What does it sound like? How perplexing is it? And what are sort of the alternative frames you would point to people to?
Sure. Well, first, I want to go back to the Army of Love thought, because I like that terminology a lot, and it made me think back to a guy I knew who hadn't told anyone, really smart guy, who said, I didn't tell anyone I love them, because love doesn't leak. And so, he meant like a girlfriend, yeah. And I'm not telling anyone that, because I'm only saying that when I really mean it, because love doesn't leak. And I thought that was so profound. I love you means I'm with you. God told us that, right? I'm with you, I'll never forsake you. His unconditional love, that is love. That's the army of love we're talking about. That, as a young woman approaches this decision, that unconditional love, the unconditional part, is the part that our world's really bad at. And so I've had to think, and I hope you all each think this through, what would it take if you found yourself in that situation? Because until you think about what it would be like to be in an unplanned pregnancy, then you can't really do your best at addressing it. And for me, as a young woman, waiting, as hard as it is, I still think if something should happen, I would need someone to come up alongside me and say, can you do the next 9 months for someone else to be able to do the next 90 years? Can you do that? What do you think is going to happen? I'm going to get dirty looks. People are going to think I'm weird. I'm going to be really embarrassed. Maybe. But guess what? You're a girl. It's probably going to happen anyway. You know what's actually going to happen? We're probably going to throw you a baby shower. I think back to being in youth ministry in New Jersey, where I'm from, and my dad did a lot of inner city youth ministry. I wanted to tell you, he was raised by Brothers of Catholic Charity after he was orphaned. And so my heart's just a big thank you to them. And our brother Bill is the closest I have to a grandfather. But he was in Northern Philadelphia, now he does youth ministry. It would happen in a youth group in the city, a girl gets pregnant, and there's just a moment of realization, and then we move forward and we say, all right, we're planning a baby shower, someone's taking this kid and sitting him down, talking to him about the responsibility behind this, and we're going to move forward together. And I know that's hard. As a church, it can be hard, and I think some people really struggle with that. But it's unconditional love that's been demonstrated to us, and therefore we need to demonstrate it to others. So I want to share that. And then to answer your question, the war on women was such an easy setup. I think it was an easy term for the left to say that Republican men wanted to take away your birth control and abortion-inducing drugs, even though they were the ones forcing us to pay for it the whole time. So it was nice to be able to retaliate and say, war on women, what about the young women in the womb? War on women, we've got amazing women like Mollie Hemingway, Kirsten Powers, Michelle Bachmann, give me more. Who else gets persecuted all the time for being a Christian conservative woman speaking pro-life issues? All the time. That's, you guys, when we speak up on our side, lambast us. And so I think that that's tired. I don't think that we'll see a lot of that used really relevantly, because I really do think we did such a good job, as Mollie pointed out, with Udall's race and others. And to see so many pro-life women enter into Congress, that didn't stick. And the more that we can say that we as Americans, we are for, we're for love, we're for, when we went down to the Supreme Court for Hobby Lobby, you saw a lot of signs that said, keep your government out of the bedroom. Well, gladly, but you're asking religious employers to pay for things that are against their moral convictions. And, most of us can't afford to pay for anyone else's anything. Nonetheless, something we're morally opposed to. So continue on in that, and just as we enter another political time, I would say use this time as much as you feel inclined to inform and encourage, and call on those who really do lead locally and nationally to speak up on this issue. It's a lot easier now than it used to be pro-life and pro-love.
Grazie, would you expand a little bit on this idea of unconditional love? And I ask you because I hope you don't mind me mentioning you are full of unconditional love for people. You are just so generous and giving, including adopting. It seems like you don't have enough people in your realm to give love to, and you have plenty of them, including all of the 8th graders in the Archdiocese of Miami. So how do you find, where does that come from, first of all? Because a lot of us feel very busy, and you are very busy, and yet you can't stop. Because you see an urgency, I think, that perhaps the culture doesn't understand. How do people react to you helping, seeing you help?
Well, adoption, I was always intellectually pro-life, but not passionately pro-life. As I was growing up, I'm a cradle Catholic, and I was taught to be pro-life. But I didn't feel any of it, and I would get a little embarrassed when I saw those bumper stickers on people's cars, and I would even make me a little mad. On the Florida Turnpike, there's a lot of signs, big signs saying abortion stops a beating heart and all that, and they disgusted me a little, because I thought, oh, those poor women, who feel driven to this, who have no other choice. A lot of people feel this way. They're intellectually pro-life, but not passionate and not convinced. And then we adopted our 5th child from China, and everything for me changed. It was like that moment where Saul is pulled off the horse, gets knocked off his horse by God. I mean, I don't mean to compare myself to him. That was wrong. But
We understand the point.
You understand the point? I fell in love with this little girl who was the most, if you could imagine the most unwanted person on earth, it was this little girl, was my daughter, Lourdes. She was unwanted by her mother, her father, her grandparents, her uncles, her aunts, her country, right, her culture. And there was nothing valuable about this girl. She was left on a dirty sidewalk, alone to die, and she became mine. And it took me a few weeks to months, to be frank, to fall in love with her. And it was the most beautiful process. If I could grant all of you an adoption with a wand, I would do it right now. Because it's the passion of my life, falling in love with my daughter. And I got to experience it as this process of knowing, getting to know her and becoming entranced with her and becoming just passionate about every hair on her head. And as this happened to me, I realized they're all like that. Every child is like that. And I couldn't stop after that. I just thought, everybody needs to see every human being like that beautiful and perfect, and take them into their hearts. I know you can't do it unless you've done it like that, but I think it's the way we have to think about everyone. And so that was my passage to passion for pro-life. But I know everybody in this room has a similar story, because you go from being intellectually pro-life to saying, it doesn't matter what it takes, I'll do it. I'll lie down in front of the clinic steps, I'll make a fool of myself, I'll be everybody's laughing stock, whatever it takes, I'll do it. Because those hairs on that little baby's head are precious.
We have joy and wonder on our side.